Thank you. Madam President, Madam Secretary, will you please, what? It's on now. Yep. Yeah, Liz took care of that for me, please. Thank you. Yep. So Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Senator Southworth, Representative Lawrence, Pat Abel,
Here.
Rocky Adkins, Charles Byers, Jacqueline Coleman, Katie Comstock, Carol Henderson, John Hicks, Brian Hicks,
Here.
Patsy Jackson,
Here.
Holly Johnson, Ryan Neff, Danny Rhodes, Senator Wheeler,
Here.
and Representative Tate presiding.
Here, thank you. So the very first, we do have a quorum, so the very first matter of business will be for the acceptance of the minutes.
Motion.
Do I have a second? All right, so all in favor? Aye. Any opposition? All right, great, thank you. Then the minutes will stand as approved. Our second order is for the budget of the 2024-2026 budget of the Commonwealth update. So Liz Columbia, if you would please present that to us.
All right. Thank you, Chair Tate. So, as I'm sure members recall, hours of testimony from state agencies were heard last interim, which in the context of this board is known as the planning period. And that was for the purpose of the board developing a 6-year capital improvements plan to be used by decision makers during the budget process. So this one and only information item before the board today, this is the 2024-2026 budget of the Commonwealth Capital Projects update, is meant to summarize and provide a high-level review of the enacted capital projects budget and context to the 3 policy recommendations and 45 specific project recommendations made by this board. On this first page, there is just kind of a summary of what I just described that process was, and then also the specific House bills that the General Assembly delivered during the 2024 legislative session to enact the 2024-2026 capital projects budget. I do give a summary here of the total request in terms of dollar amounts that were requested in the 6-year plan submitted by agencies, which totaled about $55.2 billion. And the enacted budget appropriated $25.3 billion in the first year and $1.4 billion from all fund sources in 26. So if there's no questions on that first summary page, we'll go ahead and flip to page 2. Attachment A, this is the capital project summary by fund source and by cabinet or state agency. Of course, there were some revisions in fiscal year 24, but as I previously mentioned, fiscal year 25, the total was $25.3 billion. And you can see if you look down at the appropriations by cabinet, the largest share of those appropriations did go to post-secondary education institutions at $23.6 billion. And then in 26, we had just under $1.4 billion appropriated in fiscal year 26. If you all are interested in seeing a full listing of the capital projects authorized, the Office of the State Budget Director puts out a great PDF that was linked on that first page that gives descriptions of the projects and their authorization by fund source and by agency. So if there's no questions on the summary, we'll move on to attachment B. The next 3 attachments are going to go over the policy recommendations that were made by the board, and to kind of give you a format overview of how these documents are structured. We kind of repeated narratives that were published in the 6-year plan, so just giving you all some context to what you're looking at. And then in bold text, I tried to reiterate what the board's policy recommendation was. And then if there were any, historical charts or graphs, we updated that in light of the legislative session information. So in the course of Budget Reserve Trust Fund, there was a slight tweak to the policy recommendation that the board had made in prior 6-year plans, and that was that the governor and General Assembly continue to prioritize maintaining budget reserve trust fund balances. And Director Hicks, of course, on our board, gave a great overview of the causes behind that. And in the last couple of fiscal years, we've seen, significant general fund surpluses that have benefited the Budget Reserve Trust Fund, also known as the Rainy Day Fund. And we updated specifically for fiscal year 2024 for the closeout of that, and the ending balance of the Budget Reserve Trust Fund is now $5.2 billion. And we have projections for 2025 and 2026 in light of, legislative withdrawals that were enacted in 2024 in House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 91. And if there are no questions on that policy update, we can move forward to attachment C. On this page, we have the post-secondary institutions asset preservation investment update. Here, there was no significant change in the board's policy recommendation. It just recommended that the Governor and General Assembly endorse the council's proposed asset preservation investment framework and provide funding in the 2024-2026 biennium. CPE's budget request for 2024-26 was for $700 million in general fund bond-funded bond or a pool for asset preservation. And in House Bill 6, executive branch budget bill, we had $563 million appropriated. And the list below shows how those appropriations were distributed between the 9 post-secondary institutions. And I noted at the bottom underneath those lists, combined with the 2022 enacted budget, $3.5 million authorization, we have now had a $1.2 billion investment in the last 4-year period in asset preservation. And I will note, too, CPE is slated for the September Budget Review Subcommittee meeting on education, so they might be able to provide more updates specifically at that meeting as well. And if there's no comments or questions on that, we can roll forward to the third and final of the board's policy recommendations, which related to state agency maintenance pools. Here, there again was a tweak to the long-standing policy recommendation to say that the board encourages continued use of traditional cash financing for maintenance pools. I updated for 2024 to 2026, and as we can see, while not as much as in the previous budget, there was still $95.4 million appropriated for these miscellaneous maintenance pools. So, the action was to continue use of cash. And that cash, that's in 2022, it was more general fund dollars. In this most recent budget, 2024, that was more investment income. And that kind of relates also to the Budget Reserve Trust Fund, and that, more investment income was available for use for these maintenance pools because of that growing Budget Reserve Trust Fund balance and the investment income that comes off of those higher daily balances. And then if you flip forward to page 6, there's a full list of the agency miscellaneous maintenance pool authorizations by agency. That second column, 2024-2030 capital plan request, shows what those agencies requested in their 6-year plan for the first biennium, and then what the authorizations were in the budget. There were 2 new miscellaneous agency maintenance pools, and that was for Fish and Wildlife Resources under Tourism and KET Capital Production Center under Education and Labor Cabinet.
So where are those at, Liz? And is that on this chart on page 6?
It is. So there's an asterisk, and the text is italicized for those 2 new ones.
So the first one is the Education and Labor.
The KET Capital Production.
And further down, where we see the Fish and Wildlife.
Yes. Yep.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So if there are no questions on the updates we had to the policy recommendations made by the board, the last attachment here, E, which starts on page 7, as your specific project recommendations authorizations update. So as you'll recall, you recommended collectively 15 projects within three areas: construction, maintenance, renovation, construction, new, and IT. So basically, we just took those 15 projects within each category, showed what their request was in the capital plan, and then what their resulting budget authorization was with the fund source information.
So if we look at the first one, the maintenance, so everything that we recommended was actually authorized.
Well, yes, all with the exception of one, the Renovate Louisville Detention Center Phase 2. This instead received reauthorization of the original project. And, that could just because the agency wasn't ready for Phase 2 and they hadn't drawn down enough on their original, so required reauthorization instead.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I just might say that we've never had this piece of paper in front of us this way before. We've never had every project recommended by this body to be enacted in the biennial budget. So anyway, that's, shows the virtue and the benefit of the planning process in this board.
Good, thank you very much. I appreciate that feedback. Now let's go to the, so that's a very positive note for the maintenance and renovation projects. So, and we highlighted the renovate Louisville Detention Center, so we got that one. And then, what about the utility infrastructure replacement Phase 2? Do you have any information? That was just about, what is that, a 10 million?
Right. I can't speak specifically to why that policy, decision was made to offer less. Sometimes throughout the budget process, and I can check with the analyst that covers Department of Parks specifically to see, but sometimes, as we go through the budget process, agencies might find new information that indicates, we might not actually need this much, or they can accept less, or sometimes it is just a policy decision by our members.
Because that's one of the things that at this time, of course, during the summer season, we get a lot of feedback regarding the state of the park. So, okay, we'll follow up with that. Does anyone else have any questions about anything that we've gone through up to this point? Okay, thanks, Liz. Okay. I'm going to make an assumption with this IT projects. We have the IT modernization task force or project, the committee, I guess I'll call it. And so we're working through a lot of this. So we'll see as we drudge up new information from that IT modernization, how that coincides with this. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the IT projects? Comments, concerns?
Well, if someone could explain, like here unlike the previous one, most of what we requested was done down there.
Yep.
What was the reason for that?
Yeah. And yes, sir.
I just to respond to Pat's question, most of the difference here is for items in the universities, not all of them, most of them. And just historically, whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, there have been very few line item of projects funded with state general fund or bond dollars for university IT projects. Those are typically kind of
So
been
they funded these
dependent on, yeah, exactly. So it's, again, not making a value judgment about it, but that's historically, there's rarely been an IT project for the universities, coming out of this fund source.
Okay. And then other construction, let's look at that.
I guess I'll highlight one noticeable difference here. Central Lab expansion, you guys might recall them coming in and talking about that project. The request was for 185 and the resulting authorization was 36.5 million. And the actual authorization kind of, I guess, phased that project and opted to do an expand central laboratory to fund just the design. So, you know, the original scope, I think, was all inclusive and the authorization was in smaller scope. So that's why there's a large difference there.
All right. So this is a lot of information, a lot of recapping, but thank you very much. Are there any other questions, any comments, concerns? All right. Well, I certainly appreciate the all the effort again of this board, of this project team, because I agree, we dealt through a lot of information and we did it really quickly and rapidly, and I think that some of the work that we did will actually prepare us for some comparisons, further comparisons in the future, and give us some very vital information. So I appreciate that. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Senator Wheeler?
No.
Nothing from you? Okay, then the next order of business is that our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, October. And we will set the agenda. Does anyone have any particular items that they would like to see on the agenda? Maybe additional information, anything additional? All right, then if there's no other business, then I'll see you on October 24th. Thank you. All right, very good, thank you.
You're welcome.